Hi, everybody. It's Mrs. Smith. I hope you guys are all doing really well. I miss you so much. One of the things I've been doing a lot of is reading because I love to read, and it's kind of a good opportunity to do that. So, when I was out on Amazon trying to find some books for myself to read, I stumbled upon a kid friendly book called Lemons. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but it looked really, really good and came highly recommended. So I thought I'd read it to you, and you could tune in. I'll read a couple chapters a day, and we can see what happens in this book. So I don't know. Let's look at the cover for a second. I always like to do that. Wonder what this book is about. Maybe some kind of adventure, because I feel like Binoculars is always about like kind of some kind of adventure, discovering something, right? And then what about this? Looks like Bigfoot's, maybe a foot. Bigfoot. You're right. This book is about Bigfoot. Somehow there's Bigfoot in there. And you know, when I was a kid, I used to be kind of obsessed with the Bigfoot legend. I also was kind of into the Loch Ness Monster. So there's a legend that Bigfoot, this kind of tall, giant, hairy being, lives somewhere on the West Coast, usually maybe in the forests of Oregon, deep wooded areas. And I used to be obsessed with kind of learning and finding out about the legend of Bigfoot, like kind of wondering, is it true? Is it not true? I mean, usually with legends, there's parts that are true and parts that aren't, right? So I'm guessing this book has to do with something to do with lemons, right? Obviously the title. Maybe an adventure. Something to do with Bigfoot. And maybe something about friendship. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping. So let's dive in. Let's see what this is about. Okay? First chapter. One woolly monster and a weirdo kid. Ooh, weirdo kid. I'm going to like the weirdo kid because you guys know how much I like weird and weird people. They're just so much more interesting, right? So let's see. Bigfoot. It's the very first thing I see when we pull into town, a gargantuan wooden statue of the hairy beast stuck right smack in the middle of the square. Like he's the mayor or President Ford or someone real important like that. Where are we anyway? I asked the social worker who came to get me all the way down in San Francisco. I've only met her once before this, and I can't remember her name. I think it starts with a W, maybe an M. There were two of them who came to visit. I can't remember the other lady's name either. This one must have drawn the short straw to have to drive me all the way up to this podunk place. We finally made it, Lemonade. Her eyes meet mine in the rearview mirror. They say Willow Creek is the Bigfoot capital of the world. This is going to be interesting. You mean like that thing actually lives here? She smiles and makes a left turn down 7th Street. We're almost there. Should be just up this way a piece. This place is nothing like home, and I already know I'm going to hate it. Tall pines instead of skyscrapers, dirt instead of sidewalks, and one woolly monster lurking somewhere in the forest. With my luck, this main food for this thing is a 10-year-old girl. I want to go home, I mutter under my breath. Why couldn't I have just stayed with my teacher? I call up to the front seat. Miss Cotton said she loves having me there. She even told me so. I'm sorry, Lemonade, she says, keeping her eyes on the road this time. I'm afraid that's not an option right now. There would have to be forms completed for that to happen permanently. She would do that, I tell the lady. She always has our papers corrected by the very next day. Just ask her, she'll tell you. I've already spoken to her about it, honey, she says. Believe me, if things change, you'll be the first to know. I'll make sure and remind her. She promised to call me sometimes and write me letters too, at least until I get to go back. This time the lady doesn't say anything. I lay my head back on the seat and stick my arm out of the window. The warm summer air grabs it and my hand hangs 10 on a wind wave. I breathe in deep. That was kind of good imagery, right? Hand hangs 10 on a wind wave. Kind of like when you surf on an ocean wave. It's like she's bringing her hands like this. Kind of cool. It smells like grass, dirt, and bugs. At home, the air smells like ocean mixed with car exhaust and the glorious crispy fried egg rolls from Mr. Chin's restaurant on the corner. He makes the best egg rolls in town. The sign in the window even says so. The sky is fire orange, even though the sun is just about out of sight behind the trees, leaving long, dark shadows between the pines that line the road. Which is the reason why I almost miss him. Some weirdo kid darts through the trees with binoculars hanging from his neck. He's wearing a floppy tan safari hat folded up in front and held on by a strap under his chin. Across the underside of the brim are some kind of hand-painted letters. I can tell they say something real important too, because why else would you have hand-painted letters anywhere? But he's running so fast, I can't read what they say. I wonder if she's talking about this kid right here. Chapter 2. The second worst day of my life. Ooh. Lemonade, the old man says slowly, like he's trying it on for size. He eyes me from under unruly gray eyebrows in the front hall of one of the old farmhouses lined up on 7th Street. The lady turned up the driveway of the medium-sized white one with yellow shutters on it. We walked up 5 wooden steps and onto a great big porch wrapped all around it with bright yellow swing just to the left of the front door. Inside, it's nothing like our apartment in the city. It's cold and dark and smells like old books and coffee beans. At home, we live on the 3rd floor of a Victorian walk-up. Mama painted every wall pink and hung white fluffy curtains at all the windows, and there were always fresh daisies on the kitchen counter except in the winter. She had the record player going all the time, too, usually Simon and Garfunkel or Cat Stevens and sometimes James Taylor. You guys probably don't know those artists, but they're really good. Ask your parents. Maybe look them up on Spotify. They are awesome. Simon and Garfunkel, Cat Stevens, and James Taylor. And a lot of their songs are really positive and kind of inspirational. Okay. This place doesn't have anything playing. Not a television set or a radio or anything. And the walls are just plain white ones with only boring wooden blinds at the windows. We meant to get here by 4, but the traffic in the city was awful. The social worker tells the man, "It's weird that I can't remember her name since we only drove for 6 whole hours to get to this place. We even played a round of the alphabet game until my eyelids got so heavy I couldn't keep them open anymore. I was winning up until then after spotting a Q on a liquor store sign outside Red Dining." "Not a problem," the man tells her, continuing to eye me, and I eye him right back. He's missing the middle part of his hair, like someone divided his head up into thirds and subtracted the center. I'm real good at math. I got an A in Mr. Mahoney's math class, and everyone says Mr. Mahoney gives the hardest tests in Sherman Elementary. "Lemonade," the man says again, running a hand through one of the thirds of hair that's still there. It's black and wavy with speckles of gray mixed in. There's a short beard right around his mouth that has even more gray in it than the ring around his head. He has on a checkered short-sleeved shirt and long tan shorts with hiking boots and tall white socks that come up to his knees. "Lemonade, Liberty, Wit," I say, standing straight. "Lem for short. I'm 10 3/4. I'll be 11 on September 6th. Uh-huh. He pulls horn-rimmed glasses from the checkered shirt pocket and slips them across his nose to examine me some more. There's a bright silver ring on his finger. "Small for 10 3/4, aren't ya?" He's full of the kinds of questions that don't seem to want answers. So he doesn't get one. I cross my arms and glare at him instead. Same green eyes. And he clears his throat. Those red curls. I swallow hard. "Can you tell us where Lemonade will be staying while she's here, Mr. Witt?" The lady always asks with a straight-lipped smile stretched across her teeth. He sighs and stuffs his glasses back in his front pocket. This way, second door on the right, he grumbles, making his way down a dark hall just past the kitchen. Grab your suitcase, he calls over his shoulders. My fingers curl around the handle of Mama's pink suitcase, but the lady waves my hand away and grabs it for me. I follow it, my eyes fixed on the bouncing red tag that's tied to the handle with a bright orange-green crocheted yarn braid. It has Mama's handwriting on it. Elizabeth Lily Witt. 247 Ashbury Street, apartment 3095, San Francisco, California. So this guy's name is Mr. Witt. And we know Lemonade's last name is Witt and her mom's last name is Witt. I wonder if this is her mom's dad. So that would make him Lemonade's grandfather. The wooden floorboards in the hall groan under each step, and there's a loud ticking from a clock somewhere in the house. The plain white walls in the hall are filled with crooked hanging pictures telling the story of a happy family. The house is quiet, too quiet. There are no sounds of traffic or honking horns or bustling feet of people on their way to their office. There's not even any opera singing from Miss K in 3096, practicing for her evening performance at the San Francisco Opera. Just a moaning floor, a ticking clock, and the sound of my own pulse pounding against my temple. I stop just outside the second door on the right and peek inside. This can't be it. Maybe he meant the third door on the left. I watch the social worker plop Mama's suitcase on top of a blue and green wool blanket that's pulled tight across a single mattress. There's a ratty trunk at the end of the bed and a wooden chest of drawers with bronze handles in a far corner. An old radiator sits under the window with cobwebs near the floorboards, and 100 dull-looking grown-up books line a wall of bookshelves. It's my study, the old man says, like it's an apology. It's the best I could do on such short notice. His voice trails off into a whisper, and he clears his throat again. I had no idea. It's just fine, the lady says. Lemonade, why don't you put some of your things in the drawers while I talk with your grandfather? Yeah, we were right. Grandfather? He must be a mind reader, too, because he clears his throat. A bunch more times he says, You can call me Charlie, before making his way out the door. She follows him, her lips in the same straight-line smile, but before she closes the door, she meets my eyes one more time. I'll be back to check on you each month, she says. I don't say anything. It's going to be okay, she tells me. It really is. Except for, I don't know who she's trying to convince. No, it's not, I tell her. It's never going to be okay, ever again. She smiles, that kind of smile, like she thinks she understands me, even though I know she doesn't. No one does, except maybe Miss Cotton and all my friends at home. They understand because they were there on the single worst day of my entire life. I bite the inside of my cheek to keep the tears from dropping and watch her slowly pull the door closed behind her. I sit down next to Mama's suitcase. The blue and green wool blanket itches me on the backs of my legs. Dolores Jarokowski, that's her name. I sure hope the next time I see her she has those papers she was talking about, because there's no way I can stay here. There's no fluffy down comforter with a big beautiful rainbow on it like the one I have at home, and no plastic stars on the ceiling that glow when the lights are off, and there's not even a warm fuzzy rug in the middle of the floor for cold mornings. The floor is bare naked. This has to be just one big horrible mistake. It's got to be a miserable nightmare that I'll wake up from at any moment. I want to cry and scream and run. I want to run until I make it all the way back home. My forearm wipes at the tears that find their way down my cheeks. I touch the red tag on the handle and finger the bright orange and green crocheted yarn braid that holds it in place. Elizabeth Lily Witt, I whisper. Why did you leave me? It's pretty good so far, right? I'm excited to see what happens. All right, stay tuned for the next couple chapters. Hang in there.